The new wireless Fighting Commander Octa Pro promises a more professional solution than the old Fighting Commander, with programmable back buttons, a right stick, and wireless, just to name a few of the new features. But costing almost double the price, is it really worth it? I have well over 300 hours with the original Fighting Commander Octa, and although there's a lot it does well, it's far from the perfect Fightpad. The D-pad is average, it feels like a cheap piece of plastic, and the headphone jack on mine doesn't work properly. It's still going strong, so clearly it's doing something right, but when I saw that Hori had created a Pro version, I was optimistic that the issues I have with the original pad would be addressed. So, have they? At the risk of ruining the watch time of this video, no, not really. Before we get into the weeds, I'll quickly cover the features. The Octa Pro is designed for fighting games and it works with PS5, PC and the PS4 in wired mode. It has 6 front-facing buttons as well as 4 bumpers for L1, L2, L3 and R3. Additionally, it has 2 rear buttons and all of these can be remapped. There's a button for muting the mic when using a headset with the audio jack, and there's a function button. Unlike the original Octa, which only has a left stick, the Pro has a right slider stick as well. There's a few toggles for configuring the active platform, choosing which mode it's in, and for disabling the PS5 controls. Speaking of which, you get all the standard DualSense buttons like Options, Share, the PS button, and the touchpad. The Octa Pro is an incredibly light controller, weighing in at only 184 grams. This is partially because it doesn't have rumble. For reference, the DualSense weighs 280 grams. It uses a compact dongle for the 2.4 GHz wireless connection and a detachable USB-C cable for the wired connection. The wireless range is roughly 10 meters or 33 feet. This is based on line of sight. Not sure how you'd use it without line of sight, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. Battery life is up to 10 hours and charging is handled via USB. It takes about 3 hours to charge and it doesn't appear to have a quick charge feature. In the box, you get the 2.4G dongle, 3 different D-pad plates, and a 3 meter or 10 feet nylon USB-C cable. The version that I got also came with a couple of stickers for the touchpad. The first thing you'll likely notice when holding it is that the Octa Pro doesn't feel like a premium product. It's a step up from the original Octa, but compared to basically every other controller I own, it comes across as something you might find on Temu. The fact that there's no weight to it contributes to this, but it's mostly down to the materials that it's made of. Just about everything has a low-grade toy-like feel. The shoulder buttons are an improvement over the original Octa, although that's an incredibly low bar to clear. They're bigger and feel more satisfying to use, but I would have liked them to have more of a distinct design. The surface for both the top and bottom row is flat and they sit perfectly in line, making them easy to mistake. The D-pad is another marginal improvement. You get 3 interchangeable designs that you can quickly swap. They range from very pronounced and old school to the original Octa's flat design. With the exception of the original, I find them a bit taxing on my thumb, but if you want something with an obvious bump for up, down, left and right, you have a couple of options. It's identical in size to the original Octa, which means it's quite small. For performing half circle and quarter circle motions, it works well enough, but it does press all the way down in the center. In other words, it doesn't have a pivot point. This is exactly the same issue the original Octa has, and it's extremely disappointing to see it here again. Now, the software does have an option to turn off simultaneous inputs, which is something I guess, but it doesn't mitigate the issue of erroneous input. The biggest problem here in fighting games is unwanted diagonal jumps. I haven't found this to be a massive issue in 2D fighters, but for something like Tekken or games like Contra, it's definitely way less precise than you'd expect from a Pro controller. Like the original pad, it has an analog stick with an octagonal gate. I personally don't like using a stick with my thumb for fighting games because it feels like using a D-pad with a broomstick. In saying that, this is probably one of the better broomsticks I've used for fighting games. It is positioned very close to the D-pad though. I haven't personally had any issues knocking it accidentally, but you can disable it if that's a concern. The right stick is a slide stick, so it's not really practical for anything but navigating menus. It also feels like it wasn't designed for anything but occasional use, and it might wear out quickly. The size of the controller is bigger than the original Octa, and the shape of the grips is fatter. So if you're looking to upgrade, you might need some time to adjust to the size difference. It also has a textured grip surface on the back that is extremely coarse. This makes it easier to hold for sure, but it doesn't feel great. There's definitely a zester-like quality to it, and it accumulates filth like nothing else I've experienced. Getting this thing 100% clean is near impossible. Now, the front-facing buttons are a bright point. They're nice and clicky and they're a good size, especially if you play claw grip. I use a combination of palm and claw and it seems pretty good for both. It has a mechanism for locking the USB-C cable in place to prevent accidental disconnects and unnecessary wear and tear on the port. Okay, performance. If I'm being completely honest, I don't think there's any performance advantage over the original Octa. Sure, it has lots of extra features, but none of them help me play better. Most of the additional functionality classifies as quality of life improvements, rather than raw performance upgrades. The buttons and D-pad aren't a massive improvement over the original pad, and although you can change the button mapping, you can't create macros. Being wireless is definitely more convenient, and if you're into back buttons, it has them. Personally, I find they get in the way for fighting games, although the design of these buttons does make them pretty easy to ignore if you don't like them. Having 3 choices of D-pad is nice, although once you land on your favourite, you'll probably never change it. My preference is for the original design, so being able to swap them provides no benefit for me at all. Despite being officially licensed, it can't wake the PS5 because it uses 2.4 GHz for the wireless. This is also true when using the cable. You're going to have to walk your fat ass over to the console and press the power button. The PS button does work as expected when the system is on though. Okay, so Hori doesn't mention anything about the polling rate, but based on my tests on PC using the cable, it taps out at 1000 Hz. Using the dongle, it's half that, so there's definitely an advantage of using it wired. About 1 millisecond less latency, at least on PC. I have no way to accurately test the polling rate on PS5, but given that it limits polling to 250 Hz when using the DualSense with a cable, it might be safe to assume that the Octa Pro is no faster. And maybe this is why Hori hasn't mentioned it. For what it's worth, I can't feel any difference between wired and wireless on PlayStation. You can map buttons and swap between profiles on the controller. The process for both of these is easy and fast, but there is companion software that takes some of the guesswork out of it. The software is pretty basic and it's PC only. With it, you can change the D-pad sensitivity, remap buttons, edit profiles, and toggle a few other settings such as disabling the left stick. There are 4 profiles for saving different configurations. Now, you can name this in the software, but it doesn't show anywhere on the controller. Like I said before, it doesn't support macros, so there's no one-button combos, but I'm guessing that's to keep it from being banned at tournaments. Ultimately, I can't recommend this controller. It's not terrible, but it also doesn't outperform the original Octa at the fundamentals. It does allow you to customize your experience through the various additional features, and they all work as expected, but I don't think they're worth the extra money. Then again, I don't find much value in back buttons, I don't need to remap anything, and I don't mind a cable. And to be fair, these features might make your experience a little bit more comfortable. I think Hori has made a half-decent controller for fighting games with the Pro, and it does give you many more features than the old pad. I just don't think the cost is justified, especially because it has a lot of the same problems. So unless you desperately need a wireless version of the original Octa, I'd give this a miss.